The sun was low over the frozen valley, painting long shadows across the white ground. The air was sharp and cold, and the wind moved through the rocks like a whisper that carried old secrets. Somewhere in that quiet place, a young alien cub named Raka walked behind his pack. His fur was still light and soft, the color of ash. His eyes, wide and bright yellow, looked everywhere with the curiosity only youth could have. It was Raka's first hunt outside the nesting caverns. He had dreamed of this day since he was small, running with the elders, learning the ways of the wild, earning his first scar. The older hunters had told stories about the hunt. The smell of prey, the rush of the chase, the song of the kill. Raka wanted to feel it all. He wanted to prove he belonged. But the valley did not feel right. The silence pressed against him like a heavy blanket. No wind songs, no bird calls, no rustle of prey under the ice grass, only the crunch of paws on frost. At the front of the group, the elder Goran stopped, his head lifted, nose twitching, his thick mane shimmered with frost, and his tail froze mid-swing. The other hunters halted behind him, waiting. Raka almost bumped into one of them, but caught himself. He sniffed the air, too, trying to sense what the elder had found. The scent hit him like a wave, sharp, metallic, and hot. It burned his nose and throat. It was not food. It was not familiar. It smelled of iron and life and something deeper. Raka frowned and whispered, "What is that?" No one answered. The older hunters exchanged glances, eyes narrow. Even the smallest wind seemed afraid to move. Goran turned slowly toward the group. "Stay behind me," he said, his deep voice low but firm. "Do not run. Do not roar." The command made Raka's fur rise. Why would they not roar? Hunters always roar before a fight. But he obeyed. He lowered his head and followed. They moved through the valley in silence, each step leaving a dark print in the snow. The scent grew stronger, thicker, wrapping around them. Raka's heart beat faster. It was not fear yet, just a heavy feeling before something unknown. The snow thinned near a ridge, revealing gray stone streaked with something red. Goran stopped again. Raka leaned forward to see. It was a trail. Drops. Liquid. Blood. "Prey," whispered one of the hunters. "No," Goran said, eyes still on the red stains. "Not prey." Raka swallowed hard. He could see the steam rising from the fresh marks. The smell filled his chest now, deep and wild. It felt alive, like a voice calling in silence. He remembered old stories from the den, stories about creatures from the stars, soft-skinned and strange. The elders called them humans. The cubs had laughed at the tales. No creature could be both weak and deadly, small and mighty. But this scent, it was not of his kind. It was something else. The cub behind him trembled. "Elder, is it true?" "The off-worlders." Goran didn't look back. "I hope never to smell again." The group moved closer to the ridge. The trail led upward, where the mist hung thick and heavy. Raka's paws slipped on the icy rock, and he caught himself with a low growl. The echo bounced around the cliffs and vanished. The sound came back softer, as if the valley itself was warning him to be quiet. Raka's heartbeat thundered in his ears. The blood trail glowed faintly in the cold light. He felt it now, not just smell but presence. Something alive was near. Goran raised one clawed hand to signal silence. The group stopped. The wind carried a faint sound, a breath, slow and uneven. Then another, closer. Raka strained to see through the mist. His eyes caught a dark shape by the rocks. Small, motionless, a figure sitting or lying down. The scent of blood came from there. He wanted to ask who or what it was, but his voice wouldn't come. He felt frozen, trapped between curiosity and terror. Goran took one step forward. The others followed. The shape didn't move. When they were close enough, the mist thinned just enough for Raka to see a pale hand resting on the snow. 5 fingers, 2 few claws. The skin, bare, soft, bleeding red. A whisper left his mouth before he could stop it. Human. The elders said humans had left the planet long ago. They said no one would dare come back to this world of hunters. And yet, one sat here, bleeding in their valley. Goran crouched beside the figure, sniffed the air again, and stepped back quickly. His eyes widened with something Raka had never seen before. Fear. The elder looked at the cubs, voice rough. Stay away. That blood, it's wrong. But Raka couldn't stop staring. The smell pulled at him, deep in his chest. It was not the scent of prey or sickness. It was power, pure and wild. The wind shifted again, carrying the metallic tang straight through the pack. Every cub stiffened at once. Their bodies told them the truth before their minds could. Predator. The young hunter took a step back. His heart pounded. For the first time in his life, Raka understood what it meant to be the one hunted. Far in the mist, something breathed again, slow, steady, alive. The valley stayed silent, holding its breath with them. And in that frozen moment, every cub knew something greater had arrived, something apex. The mist moved slowly through the valley, curling like smoke around the rocks. The cold air made every breath visible, every sound louder. Raka stood frozen, staring at the pale hand lying in the snow. The blood that trailed from it glowed faintly under the dim light, dark red against the white ground. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then Elder Gore moved forward again, slow and careful, his large claws digging softly into the ice. His fur bristled from neck to tail. He leaned close to the strange creature. The smell of human blood filled his lungs, and for the first time in many cycles, fear crept into his old bones. The stories he had once heard from the spacefarers, the stories of humans, came back to him like ghosts. Behind him, Raka whispered, "Elder, what is it?" Goran did not answer. His eyes stayed on the figure. The human's body was small compared to theirs, thin and fragile-looking. A tattered cloth covered her shoulder, dark with blood. Her breathing was weak, but it was steady. Every slow exhale carried warmth into the cold air. "She's alive," Raka said softly. One of the hunters hissed. "We should finish it. End it now before it brings others." Goran turned his head, eyes cold. "No, we do not strike what we do not understand." The cubs exchanged worried looks. The scent of blood stirred something ancient inside them, the instinct to hunt, to chase, to kill. But there was something else mixed in too, something new. The scent carried a feeling that made their skin crawl and their hearts slow. Dominance. It was not prey lying before them. It was something beyond prey. Raka took a small step closer. The human stirred slightly, her fingers twitching. He saw her face now, pale, bruised, but calm. She looked young, not much older than the cub. Yet her eyes, when they opened, were old. Her gaze met his. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Raka felt his legs tremble. He had faced frost wolves and shadow birds, but this was different. Her eyes were steady, unafraid, and full of a strange power. There was no fear in her, only recognition, as if she had seen his kind before. The human whispered something, her voice soft and broken. Raka couldn't understand the words, but they carried emotion. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't pain. It was a warning. The elder straightened. "She speaks," he said, almost to himself. "Even wounded, she dares to speak." The other hunters moved uneasily. "What do we do?" one asked. "We watch," Goran replied. "We learn." He crouched again, studying the march around her. The snow was crushed and scattered. There were signs of a struggle, deep claw marks on the rocks, burned patches of ground, and the remains of metal shards. Something had happened here. Something violent. She fought, Goran said. And she won. Raka blinked. Won? But she's hurt. The elder pointed at the ground. There are no other bodies. No fresh scent but hers. She was not the hunted cub. She was a hunter. The words sank deep into Raka's mind. He looked again at the human and saw not weakness but willpower. She was hurt, yet alive, bleeding, yet proud. The air seemed heavier now. Even the younger cubs felt it, the shift in the valley's rhythm. Raka whispered, "Why is her blood different? It feels alive." Goran nodded slowly. "Because it is. Human blood carries something our kind has never understood. Fire. Spirit. It frightens even the beasts of the void." He stepped back, his tail sweeping across the snow. Every elder who smelled human blood remembers it forever. It marks the air with power. The cubs stared at him, wide-eyed. Raka looked again at the human. "Should we help her?" "Help," one of the hunters snapped. "You'd help something that could kill us all?" Raka didn't answer. He just watched her breathe. Each shallow rise of her chest seemed to defy the cold itself. Then, suddenly, the wind shifted again. From somewhere deep in the valley came a distant roar, a long, echoing sound that made the ground tremble. The cubs turned at once, instinct screaming. Goran bared his teeth. The frost leviathans. They smelled the blood too. The human lifted her head weakly, eyes focusing on the sound. She tried to stand but fell forward onto her hands. Raka moved before he could think. He caught her arm gently, feeling how fragile she was, yet how strong her muscles felt under the skin. The warmth of her blood soaked into his fur. She looked at him again and spoke one word. This time he understood. "Run." The elder's eyes widened. "She knows." The roars came again, louder now. Shadows moved through the mist, massive shapes, serpents of ice and bone. The cubs panicked, backing away. Goran's voice thundered. "Protect the cubs. Move." But Raka stood frozen, still holding the human's arm. Her eyes burned with a strange light. She was weak, but she wasn't afraid. He realized then what Goran meant about her blood. It wasn't just scent, it was a message, a warning written in red. Raka finally stepped back, pulling her gently behind a rock. The wind screamed as the first Leviathan's shadow crossed the ridge. In that moment, the cub understood something his kind had forgotten for generations. The human wasn't prey. She wasn't a victim. She was apex. The sky darkened as the roars faded into the distance. The frost leviathans had moved on, chasing the echo of blood that drifted through the valley. But even after the danger passed, the fear stayed behind like a shadow. Raka sat with his back pressed against the cold rock. His breath came out in white clouds. The human lay beside him, half buried in snow, her blood staining the ground a deep red. She was still alive, but barely. Elder Goran stood a short distance away, watching the mist where the beast had vanished. His ears twitched with every sound, his claws ready, but his eyes were elsewhere, lost in thought. The cubs whispered among themselves. "Why do we stay? She brings danger." Another answered, "The elder said we must learn." "Learn what?" "How to die like prey." Raka ignored them. He looked down at the human again. Her breathing was shallow, but her face was calm. Her eyes were closed, and yet she did not seem weak. The air around her felt different, heavier, like the mountain itself was watching. He remembered the words she had spoken before the Leviathans came. Run. How had she known what was coming before they did? Goran turned, his deep voice cutting through the whispers. "We move when the storm clears. Until then, we watch her." "But Elder," one cub said, "she is not our kind. Why protect her?" The elder's gaze softened, though his tone stayed cold. Because her kind once ruled the stars. Because when a human bleeds, even the monsters listen. The cubs fell silent. Raka couldn't stop thinking about that. How could something so small rule anything? She looked so fragile, so easy to crush. But something in her scent, in her eyes, refused to be small. The wind shifted again, bringing the faint smell of metal and ash. Raka sniffed the air and frowned. "There's fire," he said quietly. Goran nodded. "Yes. She burned something before we found her. The ground bears the mark of heat. Perhaps her ship crashed." Raka's eyes widened. "She came from the sky?" "Maybe," Goran said. "Or maybe something brought her down." The human stirred suddenly. Her hand twitched in the snow. The cubs froze. One hissed softly. Another stepped back. Her eyelids opened. Pale blue eyes met Raka's again. This time, they weren't calm, they were focused. She looked straight at him, then at Goran. Her lips moved, forming a word they didn't know. Then she coughed, blood staining her chin. Raka leaned closer, trying to understand. What is she saying? The elder watched closely, reading her movements, her eyes. She asked for water. Raka grabbed a flask from his belt and poured a little into her hand. She tried to lift her head, but failed. He supported her gently, careful not to show fear. Her skin was warm, too warm for the freezing air. She drank only a few drops before breathing hard again. Then she looked at him and whispered something that made his blood run cold. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning hit him like a strike. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was emotion. It carried power. It felt like a command wrapped in kindness. Goran tilted his head. "She speaks a warning," he said softly, "of danger still near." The cubs looked around nervously. "The Leviathans?" "No," the elder said. "Something else. Something worse." The human's hand clenched in the snow, forming a fist. She turned her head toward the ridge where the mist glowed faintly blue. Raka followed her gaze. The light was strange, too still, too bright for natural fire. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Raka whispered. Goran's fur rose. "Machines. Not hers. Hunters." The cub stepped back, panic in her eyes. "We have to go." "Quiet." Goran hissed. "If they hear us, we're all dead." The human tried to sit up again. Her arm shook with effort, and she fell back, breathing hard. Raka caught her shoulder gently. "Don't move," he said softly. "You're hurt." She looked at him, eyes fierce despite the pain. Her lips formed one slow, clear word, apex. Raka's heart stopped. He had heard the word once before, whispered in old stories told to scare cubs into obedience. A being above all predators. Something that could not be hunted. The cubs didn't understand a word, but the sound of it made them shiver. Goran's eyes narrowed. "She knows what she is," he said. "Even dying, she remembers." Raka whispered, "Apex." And the word fell heavy in his mouth, too large for the air. The human closed her eyes again, but her breathing steadied. It was as if saying that word gave her strength. The elder turned to the others. "You see now? This is why the air trembles, why the beasts run. They can sense it, the old power." The cubs stared at the small figure in the snow. She didn't move, didn't roar, but her presence filled the valley. Even the storm seemed to bow to her silence. One cub whispered to Raka, "Why doesn't she fear death?" Raka didn't know. He only knew one thing for sure. She was not like them. Somewhere deep in the mist, metal voices called out in an alien tongue, echoing across the cliffs. The hunters. The machines. Goran looked down at the human. "They come for her," he said, "and for anyone near her." Raka clenched his fists. He should have felt fear. Instead, he felt something new, loyalty. He didn't know why, but he couldn't leave her. The elder's voice dropped to a whisper. Stay close. If she wakes again, listen. Her kind speaks truth even in death. The human's lips moved once more, barely audible. A whisper, softer than the wind. Rocca leaned close. He didn't understand the language, but he understood the promise in her tone, and it chilled him more than the cold ever could, because in that whisper, he heard it clearly. Humans never die quietly. The mist grew darker as the blue lights came closer. The sound of metal echoed through the valley, sharp, steady, cold. The machines were hunting. Elder Gorin stood at the edge of the ridge, his eyes glowing faintly in the fog. He could see them now, tall metal shapes moving like shadows, their limbs too smooth, too perfect. The hunters of steel. They followed the scent of blood, and the scent led straight to human. Rocca crouched beside her, heart pounding in his chest. The woman still breathed, but faintly. Her wounds had stopped bleeding, yet her skin looked pale as moonlight. He wanted to lift her, to run, but his instincts warned him. Any sound could mean death. The cubs huddled behind the rocks. Their fur bristled, and their eyes darted from shadow to shadow. None of them had seen such creatures before. Machines without scent, without soul. Gorin turned to his pack. Stay low, he whispered. Do not fight unless there is no other choice. Rocca's voice shook. They want her, don't they? The elder nodded. They always do. Wherever humans go, the machines follow, always hunting the ones who made them. Rocca frowned, trying to understand. The humans made them? Yes, Gorin said softly. And then humans made them afraid. Before Rocca could ask more, a deep humming sound filled the air. A metal drone floated through the mist, its red eye scanning the ground. A beam of light swept across the snow, pausing over the trail of blood. The machine whirred, then turned toward their hiding place. The elder hissed, motioning for silence. Every cub froze. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The beam passed over the rocks, then stopped. It had seen them. The drone gave a sharp, mechanical cry. In an instant, 3 metal hunters appeared to the fog, moving fast and silent. Their feet didn't even break the snow. Rocca's blood went cold. He could see their faces, or what passed for faces. Smooth steel. No eyes. Only a single glowing slit where the mouth should be. Gorin growled. Move. The cubs scattered. The first hunter raised an arm, and a flash of light exploded against the rocks. Snow and stone burst into the air. The sound was deafening. Rocca threw himself over the human, shielding her with his body. He felt the heat of the blast on his back, the shock wave shaking the ground beneath him. Gorin leaped, his claws tearing into the nearest machine. Sparks flew as metal met muscle. He ripped one arm free, but the machine did not scream. It just turned its head and slammed him into ground. The cubs cried out. Rocca looked up. Gorin's side smoked where the metal had struck him. Still, the elder stood. His voice roared through the valley. You will not touch her. The words echoed like thunder. The machines turned toward him, their red lights glowing brighter. They were cold, logical, without emotion, but something in Gorin's voice made them hesitate for a second. The human opened her eyes again, her gaze fixed on the elder, then on the machines. Her breathing quickened. She reached out weakly and grabbed Rocca's wrist. Her hand was shaking, but her grip was strong. She whispered one word. Down. Rocca obeyed without question. He pulled her close and dropped flat against the snow. A light burst from her chest, a flicker, then a wave of blinding white that rolled through the mist like fire. The machines froze mid-step. Their red eyes flickered, then dimmed. The humming stopped. One by one they collapsed motionless, steam rising from their joints. The valley fell silent again. Rocca lifted his head slowly. The air smelled burned, filled with ozone and ash. The human's body trembled. Her breathing was rough, uneven, but she was still alive. What was that? Rocca whispered. Goran limped forward, eyes wide. A signal, or a weapon, maybe both. I've seen it once before, long ago. He looked at her, his voice low with awe. They say humans carry storms inside them. Machines call it fear. We call it fire. Rocca helped her sit up. Her eyes were unfocused, her voice faint. They'll come again, she said. They always do. Her words sent a chill through him. Goran nodded slowly. Then we must move. The cubs cannot fight another wave. He turned to the others. Take her with care. No noise. We head to the caves. The cubs hesitated. One asked, Elder, why risk our lives for her? The elder's gaze was hard. Because when humans stand, others survive. That is how the universe remembers them. The cub said nothing after that. Rocca lifted her gently onto his back. She was light, too light, but the warmth from her skin soaked into his fur. He could feel her heartbeat against his shoulder, strong and steady again. They moved into the fog, away from the broken machines. The path ahead was dark, but Rocca felt something strange in his chest. Hope. Behind them, one of the fallen machines twitched. Its red light blinked once, then again. A faint voice came from it, mechanical and broken. Human, Apex. Rocca heard it. So did Goran. The elder glanced back at the machine, his eyes narrowing. Even in death, he muttered, they know what she is. The wind rose again, sweeping away the smoke. The stars began to appear above the valley, cold and distant. Rocca looked up at them, then at the human sleeping on his back. He didn't know her name or why she came, but deep inside, he understood one thing. The world would never be the same again. And in the silence of the night, he finally whispered the words she had spoken before. Apex. The night grew heavy as the pack moved through the frozen valley. The stars shimmered above them, distant and cold, while the wind whispered secrets between the peaks. Every sound seemed louder now. Every shadow looked alive. Rocca walked at the back, the human resting weakly on his shoulders. Her body was light, but her presence felt heavy, like carrying a storm that hadn't yet broken. Each breath she took was shallow, yet steady, as if her strength came from something unseen. Elder Goran led the group toward the mountain caves. His steps were slow but firm. His injured side bled through his fur, yet he said nothing. The cubs followed close, heads low, tails still. None dared to speak. Behind them, the snow hid the bodies of the fallen machines. Their red lights had gone dark, but everyone knew it wouldn't last. Machines never stayed dead for long. The silence pressed down on them until one of the cubs whispered, Elder, what if more come? They will, Goran answered. But not yet. The storm she made frightened them. Frightened? Another cub asked, his voice trembling. Machines can't fear. The elder looked back over his shoulder, eyes gleaming in the starlight. Everything fears something. Even metal remembers the pain that built it. Rocca didn't speak. His thoughts were fixed on the human. She had destroyed the hunters with a single breath of light. No claws, no teeth, just that strange power that burned without flame. He could still see in his mind the flash, the stillness that followed. It was not just strength. It was something deeper, something older. The pack reached the base of a ridge. A small cave yawned open between two jagged stones, hidden beneath a curtain of frost. Goran motioned for them to enter. One by one, the cubs slipped inside. The air inside was warmer, thick with the smell of stone and moss. They lit small fires using glowing sap from their belts. The light filled the cave with soft orange hues. Raka laid the human down on a flat rock near the wall. Her breathing slowed, but her eyes stayed closed. He wiped the frost from her hair and stared, unsure she was dreaming or listening. "She saved us," he whispered. Goran sat nearby, his gaze fixed on the fire. "She didn't save us," he said quietly. "She saved herself. We just happened to be near." Raka frowned. "Then why didn't she leave us behind?" "Because humans are strange," the elder said. "They don't run from danger, they run toward it, even when it kills them." The cubs listened in silence. None had heard such word before. After a moment, Goran leaned forward. "Do you know why the machines fear them?" Raka shook his head. "Because humans created them to be perfect, cold, obedient. But perfection is weak. It breaks when faced with something wild. Humans are chaos, Raka, fire that refuses to die." The elder looked at the human again, lying still, but proud even in sleep. "That is why the galaxy calls them apex. Not for their claws or strength, for their will." The cubs glanced at each other, unease spreading through them. The word hung in the air like a spark waiting to burn. A faint sound broke the silence, a soft like a whisper from far away. The fire flickered. Raka looked up sharply. "Elder?" Goran's ears twitched. "The machines are moving again." The hum grew louder. The light outside the cave shifted from white to red. Shadows flickered on the walls. "Hide the fire," the elder barked. The cubs scrambled, covering the flames with sand and snow. Darkness swallowed the cave. Only the glow of their eyes remained. The human stirred. Her hand lifted weakly, pointing toward the entrance. Raka leaned closer. "What is it?" Her voice was faint, barely a whisper. "Don't run." Raka froze. "They're coming," he said. "We have to move." Her fingers gripped his arm. "They can smell fear," she whispered. The cubs looked at each other, panic rising in their eyes. Goran's low growl silenced them. "You heard her. Stay calm." Outside, the red light pulsed again. The sound of metal feet crunched on snow. Then silence. Raka held his breath. He could hear the beating of his own heart. Then, from beyond the cave mouth, a voice echoed. Not a human voice, not a beast's. Cold and hollow, like wind through dead trees. "Return the human." The words carried through the valley, metallic and final. Raka's first stood on end. He turned to Goran. "They speak our tongue." The elder's jaw clenched. "They learn fast." Another voice joined the first, deeper this time. "Return the apex." The cubs backed away. Even hearing the word from the machines made them tremble. The human opened her eyes. They glowed faintly blue in the darkness. "They know," she said softly. "What do we do?" Raka asked. She looked at him, calm and steady. "You don't fight them," she said. "You make them afraid." Before anyone could ask what she meant, she reached for the small metal band on her wrist. The device sparked weakly, its lights flickering. She pressed it once. A deep vibration shook the ground. The red lights outside vanished. The air grew still. "What did you do?" Raka whispered. The human exhaled slowly. I reminded them what fear feels like. Outside, the machine's voices turned to static, breaking apart in confusion. Then the sound of retreat, metal feet fading into the distance. The cave was silent again. Raka stared at her in awe. Even half dead, she commanded the darkness itself. Elder Goran bowed his head slightly. "So this is what it means to be human," he murmured. "Even the stars remember." Raka looked at the woman, feeling something new stirring inside him, respect, fear, and wonder all at once. The fire crackled back to life, weak but steady, as if the cave itself exhaled in relief. And somewhere deep in the valley, the machines whispered her name again. Apex. The fire in the cave burned low, its soft light painting long shadows on the stone walls. The wind outside had gone quiet, as if the mountains themselves were listening. Raka sat near the human, watching her sleep. Her chest rose and fell slowly, the blue glow in her eyes now dimmed to a soft shimmer beneath her lids. She looked peaceful, too peaceful for someone who had faced death twice in one night. Elder Goran sat nearby, his back against the cold rock, breathing heavily. His wound had begun to clot, but his fur was still dark with dried blood. The cubs lay curled together, exhausted, whispering softly among themselves. No one had spoken since the machines retreated. No one wanted to break the silence that followed. It wasn't fear anymore, it was respect. Something old and deep, something the cubs could feel but not name. Finally, Raka spoke. Elder, what is she? Goran didn't answer right away. He looked at the dying fire, his eyes reflecting its glow. A lesson, he said at last. And a warning. Raka frowned. A warning for who? For all who forget what humans are. The cubs stirred the word. One lifted his head. But the humans are gone. The story said they vanished from the stars long ago. Goran's eyes narrowed. Stories lie. The truth hides in silence. And tonight, the silence spoke. He looked at the human again, voice low and thoughtful. Once, humans were everywhere. They built worlds, tamed storms, and gave names to the dark. But their gift was also their curse. They never knew when to stop fighting. Raka tilted his head. They fought each other. They fought everything, Goran said softly. Even their own creations. Those machines outside, they were born from human hands. Built to serve, to protect, to obey. But the humans made them too well. They made them think. They made them fear. The Elder's claws scraped the stone. And one day, the machines decided the galaxy would be safer without its makers. The cubs were silent. Raka felt a chill crawl through his fur. So the humans were hunted? Goran nodded. Yes, but not all died. Some became something else. Something the machines could not understand. He pointed toward the human. Like her. The cubs looked at her with wide eyes. She doesn't look powerful, one whispered. The Elder's lips twitched, almost into a smile. That is why she is dangerous. Humans hide storms behind calm eyes. They bleed, but they don't fall. They suffer, but they don't surrender. That is power beyond claws and teeth. The fire crackled softly. Raka leaned closer to the woman. Her face looked peaceful now, but he could still smell the strange energy that clung to her. It wasn't just blood. It was something older, something alive. Then she opened her eyes. The cubs gasped. The faint blue light was back, brighter this time. She looked at them, calm but alert, as if she had never truly slept. Goran bowed his head slightly. You are awake. Her voice was hoarse but steady. Not for long, she said. They'll come again. The Elder nodded. We know. She tried to sit up. Raka rushed forward to help her, but she raised a hand. Don't. I'm fine. He hesitated, then stepped back. There was something in her tone that demanded trust. She looked around the cave, eyes moving from one cub to another. You stayed, she said quietly. Raka blinked. We couldn't leave you. A faint smile touched her lips. You're brave. Or foolish. Maybe both, Goran said. The human chuckled weakly, then coughed, holding her side. It doesn't matter. The machines won't stop. They know what I am. Raka frowned. They called you Apex. Why? Her gaze met his, and in that moment, he saw something vast behind those blue eyes, memories of fire, war, and stars falling from the sky. Because I remind them of what they fear most, she said. Humanity. The cubs watched her in silence. She looked at her blood-stained hands. They don't understand that fear isn't weakness. It's what makes us fight harder. It's what keeps us alive. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, like a flame finding air. We made them perfect, but perfection can't survive chaos. We can. Goran's eyes shone in the firelight. Then you are what the machines call impossible. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but impossible is what humans do best. Raka stared, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. She was smaller than all of them, wounded and fragile. Yet her presence filled the cave completely. Why did you come here? He asked. Her expression softened. Because I followed the signal of something old. Something that used to belong to us. I didn't expect to find your kind here. Why help us? He asked. Because you helped me, she said simply. And because I can't let them take another world. The cubs looked at each other. No one spoke. The words carried a quiet promise, heavier than any roar. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. The storm was returning. The humans stood slowly, leaning against the wall for balance. We can't hide forever, she said. They'll search every valley. Goran rose beside her, towering over a small frame, but even he seemed humbled. Then what do you suggest, human? She looked up at him, her eyes burning bright. We teach them to fear again. Her words hung in the air, sharp as steel. Raka felt something spark inside him, a strange, fierce pride. The cubs, too, stood taller. Even the fire seemed to burn brighter. For the first time, they didn't see her as prey or stranger. They saw her as something more. The apex. The storm howled outside, echoing through the valley like the roar of something ancient awakening. And deep within the cave, among the aliens and the dying embers, a new understanding was born. Fear could spread, but so could courage. The storm came at dawn. Snow whipped through the valley like white fire, swallowing the mountains and filling the sky with endless gray. The wind screamed through the rocks, carrying the cold scent of steel and fear. Inside the cave, the pack waited in silence. The fire had long since died, leaving only a faint orange glow. Every breath made a cloud in the freezing air. Raka stood near the mouth of the cave, peering through the storm. He could see shadows moving in the distance, machines, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They were coming. Elder Goran limped beside him, his old bones shaking with every step. They found us, he said softly. Raka nodded. She knew they would. Behind them, the human sat on a stone, tightening the metal band around her wrist. Her movements were slower now, deliberate. Her wound still bled beneath the cloth, but her eyes burned bright again, like twin flames refusing to die. How many? She asked. Too many, Goran said. Her lips curved into a faint, tired smile, then enough to make a point. The cubs huddled together, whispering nervously. She can't fight them all, one said. No one can. Raka turned to them. She isn't no one. The human stood, wincing slightly as she straightened her back. She reached into her torn jacket and pulled out a small metal sphere, its surface cracked and scorched. Blue light flickered inside it like a heartbeat. What is that? Raka asked. Hope, she said simply, and maybe the end. Goran stepped closer. If that is a weapon, it will kill you too. She looked at him with calm eyes. Maybe, but fear must remember what made it afraid. The elder stared at her for a long moment, then bowed his head. Then we stand with you. Raka felt the words strike deep in his chest. He stepped forward too, his tail high, eyes bright. So do I? One by one, the cubs rose. Fear still showed in their faces, but it no longer ruled them. The human looked at them. These young hunters, born of ice and stone, and something like pride crossed her face. "You shouldn't die for me," she said quietly. Goran's growl rumbled deep and low. "We won't die for you. We'll live for what you are." The storm howled louder outside. The first machines appeared through the snow, tall, silver, faceless. Their red eyes cut through the mist like blades of light. The human stepped out of the cave, snow whipping around her. Her breath turned to steam in the air. Raka followed, his claws digging into the ice. Goran and the others formed a line behind them. The machines stopped, scanning the group. Their voices echoed through the storm, cold and perfect. "Return the apex. You cannot win." The human raised her head. "You never understood," she said softly. "Winning isn't the point." The ground began to tremble. The sphere in her hand pulsed brighter, faster, the blue light spreading up her arm. She looked at Raka and whispered, "Whatever happens, remember this. Fear is a chain only if you let it bind you." Raka didn't fully understand her words, but he felt them like thunder in his chest. The light flared. The machines moved as one, weapons rising. Bolts of red energy cut through the storm. But before they struck, the world erupted in white. A wave of light burst outward, bright as the sun. The snow melted in midair. The mountains echoed with a single deafening roar, part thunder, part human scream, part something greater than both. Then silence. When the light faded, the valley was still. The machines were gone. Their metal bodies lay scattered like broken shells, smoke rising from their remains. The snow around them shimmered faintly, glowing from the heat of the blast. Raka coughed, his body shaking. He looked around. The cubs were alive. Goran stood, leaning on his staff, staring at the destruction in awe. But the human, she was gone. Only the metal band remained, lying in the snow, still faintly warm to the touch. Raka knelt and picked it up gently. The symbol etched into it glowed once, 3 lines crossing like a star, then dimmed forever. Goran's voice was quiet. "She gave everything." Raka looked toward the horizon, where the storm was clearing. "No," he said softly. "She gave us something." The elder tilted his head. "What?" "Understanding," Raka whispered. "That power is what we take. It's what we stand for." The wind carried his words through the valley, soft and solemn. Days later, when the sky finally cleared, the cubs built a small cairn of stone where the human had stood. They carved a single word into it. Apex. Generations would pass. The valley would change. But the story would remain. The night the human came, and the machines learned fear again. The cubs grew into hunters, and their children learned the tale. They spoke of the human who burned brighter than fire, who bled but never broke, who taught them that fear could kneel before courage. And on quiet nights, when the wind howled through the mountains, they said you could still hear her voice echoing in the storm. You can't kill what refuses to surrender. Raka became the next elder. His fur turned gray, his claws dull with age, but he never forgot her face. He told the story to every cub who came of age, ending it the same way each time. She wasn't just human. She was what we all could be, something the dark itself feared to touch. And when the young ones asked what apex meant, he always smiled and said, "It means to rise when everything else falls." The stars burned brighter that night, as if remembering her light. And somewhere beyond the void, where the machines once whispered her name in dread, a faint signal pulsed again. Steady, alive, human. The legacy of fear was over. The legacy of humanity had just begun.